Okay, so it's a little bit later in the day than I'd like, but I'm gonna do this anyway. So now it's been about a month and a half since I planted these, and as you can see, this one, the all natives, is almost completely dead. The only thing that still seems to be living in it is a little bit of algae growing around the bottom, and one little sprig of grass, so it's not 100% dead, but it's close. God, I wish that dog would shut up. This one with the creeping fig is doing pretty well. There's a little bit of yellowing and browning. It's not a great sign. But overall, the plant looks pretty healthy. There's roots all over the place. And over here, there's a whole ton of algae or lichen or something. So there's definitely lots of life. So it's a real interesting comparison. The one is almost completely dead, and the one right next to it seems to be thriving. And I think that's mostly due to the selection of plants. That creeping fig did a lot better in here than the grasses and stuff, and the plants were actually planted better in the one on the right. The native plant one, you know, it's a narrow-necked bottle, so everything was pretty much just dropped in there, and I suspect a lot of it just died because it wasn't planted well. So that's it for the backyard. So the indoor terraria are a bit more of a mixed bag. I guess it's harder to be more of a mixed bag than completely dead and completely alive, but this one is not really showing any change. There's a tiny bit of chickweed still alive. Whoops. But the two lichens look pretty much the same as they always did. This one, the moss only, again is almost completely unchanged. And the third terrarium with a little bit of grass in it, you can see the grass is maybe a little bit still alive. There's a tiny bit of green still in it, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's not dead yet. And then, as with all of them, the reindeer moss looks totally unchanged. There is a little bit of chickweed still clinging to life in the bottom. And then the pickle jar, which was doing pretty well, is now not so well off. There's a couple of new seedlings that seem to be still alive in this bit of grass. This is again why I think the part of the problem might be the amount of light, because this is the side that normally gets the sun, and the grass is still alive right up against the glass. This one plant you can see is just making a beeline straight for the glass, and everything else is pretty much dead. As if, you know, the one little bit that gets some light is still alive and everything else is hurting. And the remaining bit of creeping fig that I didn't actually plant in a terrarium is kind of showing the same thing. I had it in the kitchen for, I don't know, about 4 weeks, and it was slowly dying off, and I've put it outside and it seems to be recovering, so I think that again indicates that there's just not enough light in here for most of these plants. And that's why the ones in the kitchen are kind of, they're not dying immediately, but they are slowly coming to an end. So I think we're starting to get a clear picture for what goes on in this particular area. There's just not enough light in the kitchen. And really, light seems to be a problem for most of them. So hopefully we've learned something, I guess. So the last set is the front yard, and it's really the same story as everywhere else. The creeping fig is doing excellent. There's a little bit of algae or moss or something growing at the base in the soil up against the glass. There's a bunch of roots coming down, which again I think are the creeping fig. And it's all green and alive in there. except for the reindeer moss, which has kind of become bleached, but I think that's the one that I rinsed off, so it hasn't recovered, which sort of suggests it's not alive, but it also hasn't changed for the worse. Then on the other hand, the natives are all on their way out. There's a little bit of, they're not completely brown, but they're kind of yellowish and pretty close to brown. They're damp. Whether they're still alive or just decaying in a brownish colored way is kind of unclear. So, and this one is obviously not a problem with the light. It's right on the front yard, full sunlight. It's got more headroom than most of the others. It's just, well, to be honest, I don't know what's wrong with this one. Maybe too much moisture? That's an interesting question. I have to think about that. We'll probably need another terrarium to kind of figure out what's going on here. Maybe it's a space issue, maybe something's wrong with the air in there. It did get cold, so, but it, I mean, it doesn't look like frost damage, and it's kind of protected from the air out here and there. Well, the main plant is this, what did I call it, creeping vine? I'm not exactly sure what it is, and that didn't get planted terribly well. You can kind of see the base of the root cluster right there that's, you know, didn't get buried. So it could just be that the biggest plant in the thing didn't get properly planted, and maybe once that dies and starts to rot, it starts outgassing or something, and that tends to kill everything else off. I don't know. Arguably, that might make this one the most interesting, because I don't really know what's going on in here. Anyway, I guess that's it for today.